Want to know how to start your own consulting or coaching business right the first time? Without any false starts, no expensive trial and error. Find out how with my guest and client, Sara Guttman, on today's Consulting Matters podcast. And welcome to the Consulting Matters podcast. This is the show for purpose driven consultants and coaches who are ready to own the power of what they do and position themselves for greater impact and income. I'm, of course, your host, Betsy Jordyn, and I am both a business mentor and a brand positioning and messaging strategist. So you can learn about all the things I do to help my clients turn their expertise into a clear and compelling brand that resonates with the exact right clients on my website at betsyjordyn.com. Today, we're getting into what it actually looks like to seamlessly step out of your leadership career and into consulting business ownership instead of what a lot of us do, myself included. So, this is the familiar story, and this is how it goes. So, we instantly get some clients through our network, and then we decide, you know what, I'm in business. Let me throw up a website. We find more established consultants and coaches to subcontract with, and voila, we are in business. And this works great until it doesn't. The referral network all of a sudden dries up. The subcontracting feels like you're building somebody else's brand. And the DIY website is just embarrassing. It looks like an online resume. And worst of all, we sort of hit this point where we realize, you know what? I started my business for reasons that are so much bigger than this hit or miss thing that I'm experiencing. I want more control over my career, my impact, and earning potential. So, can you relate to this? Because that's what my experience was like. But my client, Sara, that is not her experience. She avoided all of this. And that's why I'm so excited to have her as my guest on today's show. Sara and I connected last September when she joined my Impact and Income Accelerator. And her goal at that time was to use it as a low cost probe to decide, like, hey, do I really want to start my own consulting business? And through the process, she decided, yes, absolutely, this is the right direction. So we got to work on our brand positioning strategy, her website design. I even got to be there in person to help her direct her photo shoot for her website photos. And so she has so much to share about her own journey into business ownership. And she's going to share with you why it was super important for her to set herself up as a strategic partner from the get go. She's going to give you some insight into how she dealt with her own self doubt that we all deal with, and why it was really important to her to avoid expensive trial and error, and how that became her mantra on why she invested in her business development up front. So, without further ado, welcome to the show, Sara.
It's great to be here. Thanks, Betsy.
Well, I knew when we first started working together, with your DJ background, that there was no chance that you were not going to be on my podcast. But now you've gone through the whole process with me from just initial, like dipping your toe in the water to see, I wonder if this consulting business is right for me, all the way to where we are at now, finally launching your business. I'm super excited about that. But I really want to dive into your journey. Like, how do you got from here to there? Um, and I know so many people are gonna benefit from it, but I'd love for you to just kinda ground us before we get into your specific journey on your consulting business ownership, transition from your leadership job. Like, tell me a little bit more about your career. So you were a DJ, you were a event and rentals, director for a while. You have an interesting background. Like, how did you tell me about your background, and then we'll get into your business.
Sure. So I got into radio in college and loved that. Worked for WNRN, New Rock Now, and I or volunteered, I should say. Work involves payment, but I was paid probably in free CDs at the time. And then continued to work in radio, and then sort of leveraged that and transferred that knowledge into voiceover work. And I've managed some voiceover studios in New York. And then I lived on the West Coast. And then now I'm here in Colorado. And I started a family, and that changes a lot of things in life.
Mhm.
And so I pivoted from the voiceover work into working at a community center and becoming the event and rental director and managing venues and spaces, which translated with managing a voiceover studio, there's inventory, there's people, there's a lot to keep track of. There are clients, there's invoicing and tours. And so all of that translated to working at a community center for almost 10 years as the event and rental director.
So, that's so interesting, but I think you are clarifying, like, for a lot of people, what happens is, like, you might have this passion type of career that you're going after, and then practicalities happen, but then you still end up in a very fulfilling career that used a very different set of circumstances, or not different circumstances, just different skill sets. But for those who are listening and who are, like, wondering, like, what do you mean by a community organization? Is it like a nonprofit? Is it like a rec center? Like, what do you mean by a community organization? And what do you mean by dealing with their events?
Sure. So I worked at the Boulder Jewish Community Center, which is it's open to everyone. It's not a religious organization. It's a cultural and educational destination. So as you might think of a YMCA, a lot of people go there to exercise or play hockey or attend a Lamaze class, if Lamaze is still a thing, but some sort of community class. The, Jewish Community Center, if you don't have one in your town or city, it's same thing. It provides, community services, and there's also an early childhood center, and in the case of the Boulder JCC, there is premier event space, and so I was in charge of giving tours of the space for yoga retreats, nonprofit galas, yeah, weddings, mitzvahs, in any kind of, family life cycle events, at corporate events. We held lots of corporate events as well. So it was just premier event space with good parking, which is a big deal, and in beautiful Boulder, Colorado.
So, a community center is not necessarily connected to a religious organization. It could be anything that just serves a community of some kind. So, it seems like it's an organization that has like a physical asset, like a physical space that they use, that they bring together people from a community. That's what the type of organization you worked in.
Yeah. So another example would be like an Elks Lodge, or yeah, exactly.
So, in our conversations about your branding, there's a lot of things that we talked about when we looked at your expertise. And a couple episodes ago, I talked about the three different types of expertise. There's your formal expertise, there's the applied, and then there's your school of hard knocks. And what I defined applied is that the way that you approached your work, that it wasn't necessarily in your job description, but the approach to your work like really created a different type of expertise. So it sounds like, in our work together, it sounds like you had this unique applied expertise because of the way you approach that role, where it seems like other people sort of treated it as facilities. You had a different vision. Can you paint a little bit of a picture of kind of like that applied expertise that you developed at the Boulder JCC?
So when I first started there, I thought I would mainly be coordinating, just sort of facilitating as events came in or inquiries came in. I would process almost. That sounds so mechanical, but process the event. And what I soon realized was it was so much more than that. That people were making new memories in this building, and it was having a positive impact on the community at large. And one person who visited the building for like a meeting in the boardroom, on the second floor on a Wednesday afternoon, kind of I don't want to say ho hum, but it wasn't one of these large Saturday night events with full catering and DJ. So it's just a Wednesday afternoon. We hosted a lot of events like that. That person was feeling the impact and said, the JCC has become an address of consequence in this community because of all of the rentals and all of the events, in addition to the JCC's own programming, which you could call the internal programming, the offerings of the actual community center. The rentals, the external events, which I oversaw, were having such an impact in the community at large, and that off the cuff comment by this visitor to the building stuck with me, and had to this day, obviously, and it was from years ago.
So it was like you caught a vision. Sounds like so you're kind of like thinking like, all right, it's kind of at this level, and then something happened. There was like, wow, I could do something more. This is a bigger thing that I thought it was. Like, so when did you realize like I think that this is something big, and like was it that insight that later on made you decide like, oh, I think I might want to start my own consulting business and bring this to other people, or was it something else that made you think I think I might want to start my own consulting business? Like, when did you start that process where it's like I think I want to do my own thing?
It was Well, I can say, I feel like that was 2 questions a little bit. So it started to just it was a slow build in my brain the impact that a rentals department at a community center, be it a museum, a cultural center, whatever it may be. In my case, it was a community center, can have. And when we started hosting funerals and celebrations of life, that also really for all denominations, and that including non-denominational, that started to resonate with me, and I started to feel an even stronger sense of purpose, and that
Mm.
this job is, yes, it's a job. It pays bills. This is very important. A core function of a job is to pay your bills, and but it started to be more than that for me, as all these different types of events came through the building, and all these different walks of life, and people just having, I could see their lives, for the most part, improved by the space. Space shapes connection, and I was witnessing all these connections between humans happening and it improving their lives. And all of that felt very inspiring to me. And then, as far as that pivot, or where did the seed come from to start a consulting business, it came from people asking me for advice that
Mm.
both within the Boulder community and um, within the JCC community, that saying, "Hey, we heard you have a really smooth operation, a very successful and effective rentals department at the Boulder JCC. Could I pick your ear? Could I ask you some questions?" And so that's where the seed came from.
So it's interesting is that you sounds like you were an entrepreneur before you even became an entrepreneur. Is that you saw something in your job that was possible that maybe other people in a similar job didn't see. And you sought to create something of meaning even within your role. And then when people started asking, obviously that what led you to think about something else. But it sounds like you have this entrepreneurial kind of mindset. I don't know if that's accurate, but that's kind of what I'm hearing between the lines is that you saw into the job what others don't typically see into the job.
Well, um, I've had independent contractor income in my life, but I have not had any other businesses except for my massively successful keychain business in elementary school. I sold lots of keychains that I made myself. You could choose the length, choose different colors. Um, but yeah, so it was a little. I'm going to say yes. I think you're right, but I will say I had to get there in my own thinking, that wasn't my own narrative or view of myself, that I'm fine being an employee. I have been very fortunate in my life to have excellent supervisors and colleagues, and I've had a very pleasant experience as an employee. So
Yeah.
this wasn't a running from something for me, that I didn't want that. So what's the alternative? Start my own business. Happy being an employee. But it was more that I also was curious and wanting to try something that didn't exist out there yet. And I will say, in my career, I have co-created a lot of positions that didn't previously exist. So in that sense, sure. um,
Because it's interesting when I think about, like, my background, like yours, is that I don't think I ever really had a job that was exactly on the org chart, the way it was
mhm.
defined. Like, I always made up something. Like, I always created it from nothing and developed departments from nothing. And I had, Joy Spencer was on my podcast a couple years ago, and she talks about this whole idea of, like, reframe to create, like, create your own opportunities within the organization. And when she talked about that, I keep thinking like, well, at some point people are going to be if they're that type of person, like this little playground within this one company is not big enough. Like now I got to recreate this somewhere else. I got to keep doing more things. And I think that it sounds like a natural kind of fit. But when we met, you signed up for the Impact and Income Accelerator
Mhm.
in our initial conversations as you weren't 100% sure you were all in. So what was going on at that moment? So the Impact and Income Accelerator, for those who are listening who don't know about it, it was my group coaching program slash mastermind where I took a group of people through my process of how to land clients. And a lot of it's driven from my passion around positioning yourself as a strategic partner to maximize your income through maximizing your impact. And that's why it's called Impact and Income Accelerator. Makes sense. What was going on in your process of figuring this out that motivated you, and why did you need, like, a low-cost probe, if you will, before you went all in on your whole brand positioning and everything we did later?
So I just needed some time to warm up to the idea, to get there. Because again, I wasn't leaving an unpleasant situation in my case, and I wasn't uh, desperate in the sense that I was currently employed. I wasn't between jobs or hadn't been laid off or, so I was fortunate to be able to have the flexibility to say, I want to make this decision slowly and dip my toe in the water and not go, just jumping off the high dive whole hog right away.
Mhm.
So since I didn't have to do that, I didn't. So, and that is what the lower cost group program allowed a more gradual entry into this. It's a huge change. It is now. I do have a new self definition that I am now also this thing. That I am also an entrepreneur, solopreneur. So, it for me, I liked the gradual approach.
So there's so many directions to go with that. What you said a lot in that converse in just that comment. But I think that there's a couple things as it relates to your process that I think for those who are listening who are in a similar boat where it's like it's not horrible. And there's something called the doom loop where it's like, there's stages of your career where you start off in a career and it's like, I like it, but I'm not good at it. Then I move into like,
Mm,
I'm good at it and I like it. And then there's another phase where I'm still good at it, but I'm starting to not like it. And then the doom loop is that I don't like it and I'm not good at it anymore. So like career development theory would say is like make a move when you still like it and you're still good at it because at some point it's going to kind of go in that way
mm.
and it feels like intuitively you knew like this is a good thing. I'm enjoying it, but being smart about making the move before you start going into the doom loop. So that seems like a really positive thing that you did and a transferable principle that others should do is if you've been thinking about doing your own thing, don't wait until it's awful.
Avoid the doom loop. I think that's solid advice.
Yeah. Like the just it because if you're starting to not like it or if you're starting to get a niche, you're gonna go in that direction. And I
Right, you
really like
don't wanna burn bridges, you don't wanna not feel good about the work you're doing, if possible, there's
yeah.
circumstances sometimes, kind of course, factor in, but yeah, I do think that's good advice.
And then I really like your whole idea of like letting the idea sort of settle. Like not having that rush to, "I've gotta do this," but it's like, "I wanna be intentional. I'm gonna let the" kinda like I open up the bottle of wine and I'm gonna let it sit, for a little bit
Mhm.
rather than, like, pop open the thing and it's like, drink it, and then you don't even experience the positive thing. What do you
Gotta let the
feel like
idea breathe.
Yes, that's what I meant to say, breathe. I need to let the wine breathe. So what was the value for you in the accelerator? Which is I think is kinda interesting because I thought the accelerator was gonna be geared towards people who've been at it for a while, and they just wanted to level up their impact and income and, land more clients. So I was curious when I saw people who were signing up who were kind of, like, at that newer process. Like, what made you decide to sign up for the group that was on something that it's not like it was a group on branding or how to start a business, it was
Mhm.
specifically on the strategic partner. Why was that important to you?
Well, that was one of my first questions to you, and I should say I listened to your podcast for months before reaching out. So, the decision and I think you knew that, but that's it was even more gradual. Very gra I mean, we're talking at least a year I was mulling things over in my head, so there's also that risk mitigation piece of this, to be honest, too, that there are no guarantees, and so I just had to be I think I also was deciding, is this something I want or not? And is this something that I am comfortable taking on this amount of risk? And so I had to get to a yes with both and both with both of those questions. And that took time for me. So now I've forgotten your question from a moment ago because I went
Well,
back.
there was something that you had said about the strategic partner lingo. Like, there was something about, "I wanna be a strategic
Oh,
partner from the
it
beginning." There was something about that content that resonated with
yes,
you, and, like,
yes.
what was it about that resonated?
So you were saying you were surprised that someone at my you didn't think when you initially designed the Impact and Income Accelerator that it would be a fit for someone at my stage in their career, where I'm a mid-career professional, but a little baby when it comes to consulting that I which I'm okay with saying and owning because I'm confident in my content expertise. And the whole point of reaching out to you was that And I was kind of proud of myself for recognizing this, that I have a beginner's mindset when it comes to starting a business, which is a different ball of wax. That is different. That is not something other than the radically successful keychain business in elementary school that there was, that was new to me, even though I, in my work, know how to market venues, sell venues, execute on, successful events and have lots of skills. That it's different. It felt, my gut told me, I it's different. Don't assume you know everything, because there's a certain amount of confidence that is required to start your own business and be a consultant or a coach. You have to be confident that you have something to offer. And then in my case, I was able to compartmentalize and put that confidence in a box over here and say, I need help in this other category, which is the starting a consulting business, which I could Google, but I have a feeling there's a better way to do it.
Yeah. And I think this is good mirroring for me is that it's not even like about like beginner's mind or where the confidence is. It was like in my mind, I kind of have like my roadmap, like you start your right business, you then build your brand messaging, positioning your website, then you kind of figure out marketing, and then you figure out how to land clients, and then you start like growing into thought leadership. Like I kind of have my roadmap.
Mhm.
And the impact and income accelerator was sort of like later, like landing clients. Like I wanted to fill that gap. But
Mhm.
it's interesting, it's like getting me out of my own box. It's like even the whole idea of like the monetization path, I think is what appealed to you is like, I want to be packaged up. You were struggling with offers. So the offers language resonated, but there was something about the strategic partner language
Yes.
that resonated. And I think that I need to get out of my box because that's something that people from the get go would want to be positioned. Why was it important for you to be positioned as a strategic partner versus a service provider? Like, why did that content
Right.
resonate with you?
Right. Well, and I could see how from where you sit, you would mostly be thinking about and targeting people who already have the other experience and want to pivot to the new experience that you're offering to show them the way and help them get there. And so in my case, I was able to, it was almost like a thought experiment and just say, yes, even just hearing about that. I think I want to do the strategic partnership route versus the more services for hire route. And because I mean, I was also thinking about efficiency and time, and that it sounded not only the more impactful route, but the more efficient route, and both of those things appealed to me, and I didn't
Interesting.
feel I needed to try the other way first.
I never really thought about the strategic partner path as more the efficient path. I always look at it as more the strategic path, but you're right. It is a more efficient path to greater income because you're making a bigger difference. So it is a more efficient, but I never thought about it that way. So thank you.
Well, efficient in a way. It is going slow to go fast, or going slow to go slow but have impact. But I get that. I mean, especially with, I mean, the work I've done, that it does take time to build a business. And so I didn't I mean, of course there are exceptions and overnight success story. But okay, but most of the time it takes time in most cases. And and that's where I am right now in working with you and with, some of the, folks from the cohort, that I am creating communication templates and thinking slowly about my value proposition, and versus kind of throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks. And
Mhm.
also something that resonated a lot was our discussions around building a business you love. And
Mm.
that was a pivot for me, because when I first started thinking about starting my own consulting business, it was, what can I get? What do I think people want, and how can I give it to them? Which is also a good thing that's not a terrible way to approach, starting a consulting business. But in chatting with you, I mean, I started to think about, what do I want the hours of my day to look like, and what my actual work life will look like in this new business, and to make sure my services align with what I want to be doing versus what I think people will buy. I mean, I want to check both boxes. Obviously, people need to be interested in it and want to find it useful in their for their organization or their lives. but also meaning, do I want to mainly be doing solo work alone and typing on my laptop alone, or do I want to have meetings and webinars and collaborate and on-site visits? I have control over that. I can decide what I offer.
Right.
And I'm more extroverted, and so I'm fine with some solo work, but have created a business and designed a business that will allow for lots of interaction as well.
I think what you say is like, okay, I have to decide what does the market want versus what do I want. And I think that that's a misnomer. I think it's a false dichotomy. I think that sometimes we push on what we think the market wants, and because we don't do the market research, like a big part of my brand positioning process is to really dial into your ideal client and align
Mhm.
yourself to them. But I think it's like a lot of times people think in the tactics, like, "Oh, okay, well," like, like imagining there's a lot of consultants who are thinking like, "Oh, after 2020, I should focus my consulting business on how to develop a virtual workforce and how to do that." And then, a couple of years later, everyone's like, "Oh, well, we don't wanna go down that path anymore. We're gonna go here." So now all of a sudden your brand is like based on nothing, like now you have to
Mhm.
like start all over again
Mhm.
rather than, what was a bigger, more strategic problem? That you're really trying to help people solve. And I think that that's where a lot of people think like, oh, this is what people want, which is another version of your employee job where you just want to just deliver tactics rather than strategically, like where are they really
Mhm.
going and how do I align myself to them? Like what's the problems? And I think that I think it's a false dichotomy that people have because I think what we identified is not like, oh, I wonder if I went with the more logical or what I really loved, it was like I found the more strategic positioning that makes sense for both of us. It makes sense for what you're trying to help your clients do. It's not like I'm pushing something that I love that my clients don't love.
Right, no, I completely agree with you that it's not an either or, but there's a Venn diagram, right? And so that's what I was trying to figure out is where's the overlap between what is needed and would be useful in the world and that I have to offer. Trying to
Yeah.
figure that out.
And I weren't so wasn't I was just more reflecting on that, like, what you were the business that you love language is it's
Mhm.
really exposing a lot of what people think, that
Mhm.
leads them into a path where like, if you talk about the difference between the service provider and the strategic partner, they start off with, like, "Oh, okay, I'm just gonna deliver tactics. I'm gonna go and just respond to whatever the market asks of me, whatever my referral want, I go and subcontract," and I hit a wall because they were thinking about like, okay, this is what people want because it looks like my employee career rather than the other way around. And I appreciate you took the time to avoid all of that. And I don't know where you got the insight that I want to avoid all of that, but you avoided all of that where other people may go years, in the desert, like the Israelites in the desert, forever. Like they spend wandering around with subcontract and rely on referrals before it's like, "Hey, I should take control over this. Hey, how did you?" Like, I brought up my Jewish background.
Um, yeah, I mean, I remember when I first reached out, I shared that I had a 16 or so page Google Doc of brain dump, just ideas of ways I could start a business. I could focus just on software. Right? I could just helping venues with software, or and then there's pricing optimization. I mean, there's cost effective venue improvements. I mean, I could focus solely on any of these things, and I just felt
Yeah.
very overwhelmed, in terms of what direction do I go? I need another set of eyes, I need another brain on this, ideally one that has been there already and knows a thing or 2, and that is you. Or it ended up being you because I just began to sorta trust your medicine, if you will, by listening to your podcast.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate the trust. And, I ever since I had that skin cancer surgery and I got all super passionate about my new surgeon and their great
Mhm.
branding, I'm glad that you mirrored back that I still trust in you because I do feel like that's the heart of why we do all of this hard work is to make the person on the other end feel that they're in good hands. So, thank you for mirroring that. So there was a point in the accelerator that you did decide, like, so you were sort of like went in, it's like, I'm not quite sure, I got a million ideas. And there was a point that you said, I do want to go all in on this direction.
Mhm.
And then you upgraded to do more of the one-on-one work with me. Like, what was it that convinced you from maybe I want to do a consulting business to this is my direction. I definitely want to go down this path.
combination of knowing the accountability would be helpful, and that having skin in the game, I would not want to be frank, I would not wanna waste my hard-earned money. That if I invested in my career and starting my business, I would see it through and not let self-doubt or other distraction, anything, keep me from seeing it through. And then also wanting to, again, that word efficiency is coming up, in terms of skipping some trial and error and being able to not have you do things for me. I still create my own business, but to just have expert guidance and say, "Hey, I'm trying to decide between these 2 things. What what are your thoughts?" And the example that's coming to mind for me right now is, do I use my name or do I create a business name? And you said, "Oh, don't do," and you probably had a whole podcast episode about this, right? So that, to not use, your advice to me was to not put myself in a container and, come up with a different here, do you wanna just share it? You'll summarize it better than me.
Oh, like, thank you. No, you continue. This is like one of my hobby horses. So it's like, because it was so painful for me, like having a fictitious big business name was was a huge reason why it was really hard for me to pivot from my consulting business to what I do now
Mhm,
because of all of the associations with, my name, like my URL, changing all of these broken links, the branding side, like reshaping everything. So it's like, but if I started with, like this is just this, when I think I probably said whenever I got to that part is like I tell my kids, like you can make your own mistakes, just don't make mine. This is one of
mhm.
those things like, oh please, for the love of God, don't do this. It's going to be painful, because you never know where you're gonna go. You don't know, so you
Right.
need a container. Because I think this is your business for now. I don't know, I think this is a great business. I think this is a highly successful one, but there's 1,000 ways you can go with it. That's gonna be maybe at this thought leadership level around the community and creating community. It could go into a different direction altogether, but if you say, "Rentals are us," or "The Rental Maven," like, now
Mhm.
you're pigeonholed and there's nowhere to grow, and if you're an entrepreneurial person.
But it's been a leap of faith because in my experience, as I have told friends, family, coworkers about, "Oh, I'm pivoting, I'm launching out my own business. What's the name of it?" And when I say just my name, everyone kind of goes, "Okay." Because they don't get it that right now. That it'll make sense later. And everything you're saying makes sense, but not everyone I talk to listens to your podcast, Betsy. So
But you could
but
change the
I
way you
say
say
I
it.
in 2 more sentences, I explain the decision, and then they go, "Oh, okay, that makes sense." But
Or
the,
you don't have to
automatic question
say,
is they just want the cute memorable name, the cute logo, the sort of traditional business.
but you could just say, "I decide," like, "I'm moving from my career, and now I'm becoming," I forgot what we use for your unique title, like rental event strategist or something, like, what's your
Venue
title?
operations consultant and
Venue
strategist, which is
venue
which
oper
is still which took a while to get to and could change at some point, but it needed to convey the
so
operations piece. Mhm,
So this is when we work on our "So What I Do," is that your business name, like, so let's just say you called yourself Rental Mavens or Us,
mhm.
like, they're not gonna know what they're still gonna have, "Well, what is that?" They're still gonna have the same question.
Well
So
well,
this
I
is where you have
started
the
with
operate
venue
no mat
consultant, and
but
that wasn't enough.
but no matter what the so my fictitious business name was
Mhm,
Accelera Consulting Group.
mhm.
Does that convey anything? Did you know what I do? No, you don't.
Right.
But if I said, I've decided to pivot my business from consulting and now I am a business mentor and a brand messaging strategist for purpose-driven consultants and coaches. And what I do is I help them repackage their vast strengths and experience into a thriving business that they love. That's that's where it's like you just enhance your messaging. So that's part
Right.
of the journey is just to get the messaging. So if you said, I decided to leave the JCC to take the experiences I had around turning that rental department into a revenue generator that provided reliable revenue to fund the mission that allows the JCC to grow their impact without having to get more donors. Now that's like more clear. Now people are like, "Oh, well that's interesting."
Right. Right. Well, and through this process, when I was dipping my toe in the water and said venue consultant, which is the shorthand, that is what I'm doing. But for people who were not in the hospitality industry, the assumption was, so you help like a scout, location scout. So you help people find venues? And I was like, "Oh, that's not it." So I was like, "That's not the right title," because but then anyone who's in the hospitality industry, if I said venue consultant, they knew what I meant exactly. Consulting venues, helping them run, be rocking venues and run more smoothly. But I needed something that worked for both types of people, in the industry and outside of the industry. So, yeah, there were the I just it was helpful, to go back to your original question, to have guidance, to just have these conversations with someone, with experience around what it's not simple. It's not lawyer, doctor, firefighter. I have to figure out, how do I describe what I do?
Even with that, though, I think that, using my skin cancer thing as an example, I could have gone to a plastic surgeon. I could have gone to a dermatologist, but I found somebody who called themselves experts in skin cancer cure and recovery.
Mhm.
Like that seems like they could technically be a dermatologist. They can
Mhm.
technically be a plastic surgeon, like, they could technically be both, but the
Mhm.
label creates a whole different thing, and I think that that's a big part of what we worked on, is it's not about and this label can change because that's part of the process is, you put something out there, see how the market responds, and it's like, "Oh, well,
Mhm.
I'm not gonna be that person," I like, 'cause, like, for me, it's like brand messaging and positioning lands more than if I just said branding, if
Mhm.
I build branding versus brand positioning and messaging. It lands differently, so you just keep playing around with it. But what was it so talk to me a little bit though. I want to go back to the question I asked is I definitely appreciate that you felt like you got accountability. You
Mhm.
had expert outside perspective to help you commit to this direction. Was there anything else that gave you like an inner clarity that this direction outside of like I have more trust in the process, like I created a container of growth container for myself. Is there anything else that happened to you while you were going through the accelerator that made you go from like I kind of think this is the direction to me to I'm ready to give I have a plan, I have an exit date, I'm doing it. This is my plan. Like is there something that happened to convince you just the rightness of the direction?
I wish I had a diary. I'm trying to think if there was and maybe I shared something with you that you're remembering that I'm not, a moment. I am not remembering a day, although maybe there was, um, where it wasn't a flipping of a switch.
Yeah.
It was more gradual, maybe more like the visual would be a scale and the tipping of the scale and just adding little grams to it, and then, every time the impact and income accelerator would meet, it would add a little weight to that side of the scale, and just slowly it tipped. Are you remembering something? Did I share something previously that I'm forgetting?
No, I think that I was curious about that one because I think for a lot of people, it's like you're on the fence, and there's this like and like I was meeting with a potential client yesterday and he's like, I love your program, but it's like I'm just questioning myself. Like,
Mhm.
can I really step in? Can I do this? And I was wondering if there was like an insight for that person. But I think what you're
Mhm.
saying is that it does make sense. It's like I just take, several actions in this direction. Maybe it's not like I do a whole thing, but I do, like, baby steps, and I put, like, a container in front of me, and then at some point, the thing tips. But I do wonder because you mentioned, like, every time we got on the accelerator is if being around a group of people who are in the same
Mhm.
journey at the same time, like on a subconscious level, like versus if you just jumped right into the one-on-one work with me, would it have done the same type of confidence building versus like I'm surrounded by either eight other people who are literally in the same boat and on the journey in the same way. And I could see some of them above me, some of them are at the same place. Did that help at all?
Certainly, certainly. All of that is true, and I also think being in the headspace. just spending time in that world with other people who were already doing this type of work or not do or doing work in this way, I should say. No, it was that's one of the fascinating things to me about the Impact and Income Accelerator is none of us do the same thing, but
Mhm.
these universal principles apply. The just being in that headspace, built confidence for me, over time, and I think at some point, I'm remembering now that I did have this thought that helped me take the leap, if you will, that think of it as an experiment, Sarah. Okay. That's what I would tell myself versus you are now making a change that is a life sentence and you have to do this for the rest of your career in this way. And, and because that is I think I had some of that more black and white thinking at the beginning of my considering making this change, and when I realized you can do this for a few years, and I started to think of it as a win-win, that either I do this and it's successful, win, or I do this and it's not, and I go get a job somewhere else again, which I already know about myself I don't mind.
Yeah.
So once I realized it was a win-win, I was like, "Well, go for it." That it's a you then you will just know, and I for me to start this business and try it, I will never have to wonder what would that have been like because I'm finding out. And so that is a win, and so for me, that was helpful as far as calming nerves
Yeah.
or building confidence to just chill out a little bit, think of it as an experiment and try it.
Yeah, so it's like having a vision for starting the business right. And some of it is I have a beginner's mind. I'm willing to learn and surround myself with experts. I'm putting some accountability and structures in place. But ultimately, I'm going to trust myself regardless of what happens here. I can succeed on the other end. My life experience has taught me that I'm resilient. I can overcome. If this iteration doesn't work, I could pivot. If I decide I don't wanna do this and I go in a different direction, I could do this because I have a track record of resilience. Maybe not a track record in business ownership, but I have a track record in resilience that I can rely on.
Right, that I am not worried about my ability not my ability to survive, that's not what I'm trying to say. It's more I don't pretend to know the future, I guess, and that
Mhm.
maybe whatever this is part of my journey. And so whether it works out or doesn't work out, what does work out mean even? If it leads to something that the next thing after it that I wouldn't have ever tried or been able to do if I hadn't done this thing first, it totally worked out, but life is lived forward. And so that's where that just had to get my comfort levels with risk up to where they needed to be to take the leap and now I'm it's great, I'm accepting of there's discomfort when you're doing something new, and then that doesn't mean it's the wrong thing. It's just that's part of it. And
Yeah.
it's that there's gonna be moments that aren't familiar, and that's okay. And that again, that doesn't mean it was the wrong choice.
Like, even when we're talking about the business name, like, we could talk about all the money and effort and all of the failures that went into me pivoting my business, but the reality is this is why I'm so passionate about what I do, is, like, starting the right business right the first time is because I didn't start the right business right the first time. I went through all of those freelance years of, like, just relying on referrals and then I went all
Mhm,
in, but I went for the safe business, not the business that I wanted, so then I had to go and pivot it and even then, it's like, well, what's safe? And that took me a
mhm,
lot more money and time. But what if I didn't spend all that money and time, I wouldn't have these best practices that you were so glad to receive or worst
right,
practices. Actually, you've
exactly.
like so it all pays forward. And it's interesting, even as I'm writing this workbook and this book on my brand positioning process, like all of these different iterations of things that I've been creating that is like I didn't do. It's like I'm kind of pulling all these threads. Like everything counts, it's just that it may not count in the exact container that it was before, but we always get to pick a different container. Speaking of the
Mhm,
container, um, I would love to talk to you a little bit more about your process of
Mhm.
so somewhere in October, so we got into your individual brand positioning strategy and your branding, and we even had a fun time in Denver where we got to do your photo shoot live with the amazing Danielle.
Mhm.
So talk to me about your experience of clarifying your own personal brand. Like, what was the part of it that was really easy and super fun? What was the parts that was challenging, that you didn't like, that, was there moments that you were like, "Betsy, you drive me absolutely nutty?" Talk to me about your process, positives and negatives, or maybe constructive.
Ah, uh, so the photo shoot, it was very helpful for, uh, you to be there to help with even the shot list. I didn't have a shot list in mind, and I didn't know what I needed, and also you had a recommendation of, specifically a branding photographer, which is a different type of photography from portraiture and event photography, and I feel confident I could have found a good branding photographer because of the work I do now. I know a lot of event photographers, but again, efficiency. You knew one already, so thank you. And your recommendation was great. I enjoyed working with her, and the pictures. We captured everything we needed, and so that was a positive experience. One of the challenges for me was the clothing, to be honest, that I'm not a fashionista and I enjoy a good pair of leggings and have a bit of a uniform and wear a lot of the same clothes day in and day out. But this needed to be elevated, right? And so having, over Zoom, holding up some, what about this? What about this? And, going to Pinterest and looking for ideas and using, some friends and family who are more fashion inclined to all help me bring it all together and pick out the clothing that conveyed the professionalism that I wanted conveyed in the photos. And so that was my big challenge, and I spent a lot of time just trying to figure out, the clothing piece because for me that was out of my comfort zone.
That's interesting because everybody has like a certain point of the process that's uniquely challenging, and that for sure was your unique challenge. And usually for me, it's like, okay, I kind of can get a vision, but it's like I don't know which way we're going because like your color palette, like when I look at the orange and the color of the picture behind you,
Mhm.
we did definitely use in your color palette, but the orange threw me off because I always see you in the orange, and so I was thinking like, "Oh, maybe bohemian." So, by the way, Pinterest thinks I love bohemian chic clothes, like, like,
Thank
Pinterest
you
keeps,
for
like,
ruining your algorithm for me. While
like
anyway.
but I think it's interesting because once we got the photos, it was like, "Well, this is great, like, this is totally you were totally comfortable," but it did take a little bit, and I think that that's where just the expecting of the process is who knows what's going to be, like, your own personal point because it was easy to identify your ideal client. That was the easy peasy, is easy to identify the problem that you were solving, clarifying what you did, like, easy, 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 so it's like, "Okay, bam, 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 this is gonna go well," and then it's like, "Okay, here's this one part of the
I
process, but
had
that
to throw you a curveball, Betsy. It couldn't be too easy.
I know, but it was so much fun, like, it was so fun seeing you at your photo shoot, like, just, like, seeing your warm smile and seeing all the energy, like and we spent a lot of time there, like, it was a long day, but, just keeping your energy up, like, I was really impressed with you just, sticking with it and pushing through and being the model that you became on the other end, that was really fun.
Thank you. Yeah, and it helped your energy and Danielle's energy because, as you know, I'd gotten back from out of town late the night before, and so it was quite the thing to I even had to have a friend pick up one of the tops that I'd had pressed, professionally pressed for the photo shoot, but it was a holiday. It was right after Thanksgiving, and they were closed. So, anyway, I had to have it I realized timing. I asked a friend, "Can you pick this up for me and leave it at my house so I can first thing the morning I get back when they're not open and my top will be held hostage, that so I can take it to this photo shoot I'm doing in Denver and all the pieces, it all came together. Mm.
Like, now I'm visualizing the room again, like, pulling out all of the outfits and, like, laying them out, and then, like, I'm steaming them while you're getting your makeup on, and then Danielle's, like, organizing, like, which outfits go together. This is why you can't do it alone. Like, if you were going to a photo shoot by yourself, but not having some of that type of support around you, and knowing that, like, I think you did do the right thing. I think the reason why you started your business right the first time is you created a container of support around you as you were walking into this new territory.
I agree. I was going to elaborate, but the short of it is I agree. And I was just thinking more just to paint a picture for anyone who's never done a professional photo shoot for a branding photo shoot that I did. I think I made it harder in a way than it needed to be by not making enough decisions ahead of time on wardrobe. And I was thought, well, I don't want to not have everything I need. So I almost filled my entire car with clothes, even though it was a 3 outfit situation. And but I hadn't made final decisions. And so I wanted to be over prepared, which is not a bad thing. And then it was with your help and Danielle's help that you were able to give that outside perspective and say, yeah, this one looks better than that one. Go with that. And I did great. Thank you. Let's do it.
And I think that if you didn't do that, like, I keep looking at your picture behind you, like, that bluish
Mhm,
color is an anchor color for your color palette, like,
mhm.
it's on your hero section, like, love that color. And I think without you bringing all of those pieces together, we might have gone in a totally different direction. And I think sometimes, like, when you pull in the pieces, like, you just have to have this intuition of, like, this is gonna all make sense. So I'm glad you did it that way. I wouldn't change a thing. And I'm glad you wrestled with it, because I don't think we would have gotten to the website that we did if you didn't wrestle with it. We might have just had a plain white background with just a few
Mhm.
colors, and it wouldn't have had your personality and all of that. Um, as we're kind of like moving towards the end, I want to just have a couple wrap up around like your business and just as in a wrap up of the value of this whole thing. So, you could have gone the DIY path and went on this, and but instead you chose to invest in your business development at this particular point in time. What would you say is this trajectory you would have gotten, and where do you feel like your trajectory is now because you invested in yourself?
My guess is if I hadn't gone the Betsy route, I would be having some success, but it would be a little more whack-a-mole, right? Maybe a little more hit and miss and a little more aimless. And there definitely would not be as much clarity as there is now in terms of the path that I'm creating to take. So I was just thinking simultaneously about that quote, "If you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there, or every road will
Yeah.
get you there," which is a terrific quote. And so to take the time to think about, I mean, and this is also one of the 7 habits of highly effective people, right? Start with the end in mind. And so I'm doing that with you, but also you've been so great about communicating to stay flexible at the same time, and that don't get your heart set on, you're not trying to convince me that I'm building the one and only final perfect quote unquote right business, even though we do use the word right, the right business. That you're saying you've always been clear with me that you could help me build a successful business and that I like and that I'm confident in the work I do and how I do it, but also it might evolve and be okay with that. And I've always appreciated that about you and your approach that it's not black and white.
Thank you. And what I observed in you is going back to the strategic partnership positioning is like that I've seen grow in you. Like at the beginning, you were like, oh, well, maybe I can go into a couple other organizations and like do everything and build everything. And the way that you're thinking about yourself and seeing the value what you're bringing. It's like, I want my business to be a promotion. I've already built it. Now it's time for me to elevate and develop the next group of people underneath me who can do those skills. Like, it's time to transfer those skills. And I see your thinking move into that more strategic positioning, bigger than I'm just going to go in and be the service provider, even though it's a
Right.
temptation. I've seen
My
that
initial
change. And
idea was to absolutely to do what I already did just for other people, in other organizations. And because that's comfortable for me. I know how to do it, and I knew it would be helpful, so that would feel good to me if I was being helpful. And and then, be like, here you go. Great. Here are some new beautiful, excellent floor plans. You're welcome. and
yeah.
and and in and in listening to your podcast and having conversations with you and working with the group, that yes, I am seeing and desire that greater impact of more of a transfer of knowledge and creating more institutional knowledge for the organizations I work with and the people I work with, and thinking about how the training and passing, having that partnership mindset is so valuable in terms of having a greater impact. So,
So, if with that in mind, let's talk to your future clients,
mhm,
uh, your nonprofit executives, event and rental directors who are on this journey wanting to turn their event spaces into reliable revenue. Based
mhm.
on based on what you know now about yourself, like, what kind of partner are you and why are you the best person to help them?
So I'm having thoughts around how I feel very um intimate isn't the right word, but I care a lot, and so when I take on a project or a client or an organization, there's no and I can't not care. That's just not an option. And so I'm invested. And that I think that's the kind of person I guess it's very basic, kind of golden rule. Be the person you would want to work with. And so I try to do that. I think about how I wouldn't want cookie cutter solutions. I would want to feel seen and understood. And I mean, unless I'm fine with if this solution worked for other people and it's proven to work, okay, that's great. But there's still something custom about all of these organizations that I've had conversations with and worked with and given advice to over the years, that it takes time and real conversations, because I can't just say do this, do this, do this without knowing more about the context and what's going to actually work for them. And so luckily I'm a bit of a puzzler. So I like, it tickles my brain to solve puzzles. And I approach all of all of these venues that I've spoken with, as puzzles that need solving. And I think it's fun. I'm also pretty fun. But I just like to have fun at work and during the day, and even if it's something dry, like talking about parking, which I have lots and lots of thoughts about parking solutions, that I try to just make it fun as well. And I really do think nonprofits, I mean, what nonprofit has all the money they need? None of them, right? And so
Mhm.
they all, if you're a nonprofit that owns your own building, why not have that building be an asset and not a drain? However, you have to do it strategically, or it will become a pain point, or a larger pain point if it already is a pain point.
So I hear a lot of great things about why you're the perfect person. One, you have a vision for what you see as possible for them that they don't, which is making the asset something that's something like their physical facilities as an asset, not a drain, and do it to go. And you have the expertise to help them do it in a strategic sort of way. Like, there's that part. You said that you're very passionate about what they're trying to do and that you don't have cookie cutter solutions. It's customized to them. And then also you take topics that kind of seem like they might be dry and you make it fun and engaging. So it sounds like your brand promise is a lot more of like, I will help you, transform your facilities into a revenue generator, probably faster, more strategic, and it's a sustainable way. But the process itself that may seem like it's dry is a lot more fun and engaging. Like you'll love the destination, but you'll also enjoy the process along the way.
Absolutely, and the whole point of all of this is in the end yes, the whole point, is additional strategic revenue and how valuable that is and helpful for a nonprofit organization, but behind that revenue represents people and events and connection, and that all it's not all fun. Some of it is memorial services, right? But a lot of it is fun, and all of it is meaningful and impactful. And so that motivates me, and I think there are nonprofits that don't look at it that way, and organizations that don't look at it that way, and I hope through conversations they can start to see it that way and get as excited about it as I do.
That's awesome. With that in mind, what is your new website that everybody could check out? What's your address and how could people get a hold of you?
Absolutely, sarahgutman.com, no H on Sarah, 2 T's. And I'm on LinkedIn as well. And I just, since we're doing this, Betsy, we're under the hood. I already have the alias Sarah with an H for email. And it occurred to me earlier today, I need to go ahead and buy the URL Sarah with an H because this is Sarah's out there. You know what I'm feeling and what we're talking about here. And I know you're Betsy Jordan with a Y. So you know spelling.
I
And
know
I
because
need
it's Betsy
Mhm.
Jordan with an A gets all my emails. So,
Right.
yes, you're
Right.
right. I should
So
have done it years ago.
I know. So I had thought about it, 2 months ago with email to make sure I had Sarah with an H and without an H. But now I'm realizing I'm gonna go ahead and secure that URL so it automatically forwards to Sarah without an H, sarahgutman.com, Guttman.
And thank you. You just gave me a new best practice that I should share with all of my clients on people who have names like that. So, thank you. Is
Yeah,
there anything
help the Bryans and the Bryans of the world, help us all.
right. Yep. So, is there anything else you want to share about your experience of converting your career into a, a will be thriving? I'm going to say it. It will be thriving consulting business that you love and your clients love as well. And I'm just not asking you the right question.
Is there anything else I would like to share? I would say for me, it's been being authentic to my timeline. And
Mm.
what's been so important is the beginner mindset with that duality of having the confidence to start your own business, which requires that confidence, but then to simultaneously have an awareness of knowing what you don't know and even assuming there's a lot you don't even know to ask about and to not be afraid to ask for help and that doesn't mean you're not going to be very successful in your business. You don't have to know everything.
And you're not going to know everything. I mean, it's just not it's not logically possible if you've never done it before.
Right.
What I wanna reframe one thing you said, though, is you said that it's like you need to be confident. I don't know if you need to be confident. I think you need to be courageous, and confidence will come later. Like, you were
Mm,
courageous, but we dealt with some of the confidence issues, and then you
that's
came
true.
out on the other side, but you had the courage to get into it. And I think it's like if I were gonna wrap up this episode well, I am wrapping up this episode. This is
Confidently
my
wrap it
show.
up, Betsy. Put a
I
bow
this
on
is
it.
my show. I know how to wrap up. No, my take on this is, though, that is starting the business right the first time or starting the right business at any point in time isn't the matter of luck or even talent. It's the consequence of strategy. It's like really putting the strategy and putting the right support around you. And that you don't have to know everything. You shouldn't already know it. That's a myth. Like, I should already know this when you're starting off something new is a total myth that keeps you small. That's a lie that I think part of your brain is telling you is like, I should already know this, but it's like, but I'm stepping into the unknown. What universe should I know how to do this? Like, it's not logical that you would even know it, but we all believe that myth. So I think you did a really great job, like, busting that myth from the get-go, that you didn't waste time squabbling around and swimming in those waters, and you got the right support, and I think that it is great results. Like, if you think about from the minute we started, it was in September, October, November, December, January, February. We're 5 months in. And that includes, and now you've walked away. You have your brand positioning, your messaging, you have your website, you have your photos, and you have all the skills you need to land strategic, high paying clients that you wouldn't have had before with this ROI mindset. It's like that's in the grand scheme of things, that's not a lot of time. When you think you
That's
could have
true.
been going years and years trying to figure this out. So that's my take on
You
it.
don't
Is
know how
this
much I was ruminating in my brain. Thankfully, you don't live in my brain. He'd be like, "Come on, enough with the analysis paralysis, Sarah. Move on."
And I'm sure none of my listeners can have any understanding of analysis paralysis. Wow, that's just a you problem. I feel bad for you. Like, I'll just feel bad for you from afar because we all don't feel that way. Well, we all do.
Everyone
But
else with
anyway,
complete clarity except me.
I know you and I can go on and on and on, but I do have to wrap it up. Um, so thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you for sharing your experience. Thank you all so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to rate and review it. Pass it on to your other consulting or coaching friends or the people who are thinking seriously about becoming consultants and coaches so that they can be inspired by Sarah's journey. And if you are in this place where you want to start your business right, or you want to flip your business and start the right business and you want to do it right, please definitely reach out to me. You can head on over to my website at betsyjordyn.com. And again, Jordan is with a Y. Book a call with me or learn more about my services or listen to more of the stories I have with people like Sara. I'm very passionate about empowering the success of purpose driven consultants and coaches. And until next time, thank you all so much for listening.